Hi there, welcome back to my channel. This is Lydia with Sweet King's Garden, and I am reporting back with a pregnancy update more than a year later. My intent was to show a video catalog of my pregnancy journey, and unfortunately the last update that I had was I think at the end of the second trimester or beginning of the third. I don't know, it was so long ago. So today is Tuesday, April 16th. I had my daughter on Friday, February 10th, 2023, so she is just over a year old, and we did end up having a baby girl. So this video is really to focus on the tail end of my pregnancy journey and then to speak about my birth story. So I did share several videos. There are about 3 videos prior to this one, so I encourage you to check them out first and then come back to this. You don't have to watch this video in its entirety. You can also just play this and listen out. I am literally just going to be right here in my garden. But I really think it's important that I release a video that fully ends the pregnancy series that I had, because some of you may be interested to know, okay, well, Lydia, how did the rest of your pregnancy and birth story go? So here it goes. I last left off on the second or third trimester. I had a really healthy pregnancy aside from the normal nausea at the very beginning. By second trimester, I was feeling my normal self, getting active again, was out gardening and doing all of the things. Still had a very healthy third trimester as well. Now, my husband and I were working with midwives with the attempt to have a home birth. And we were super excited, very diligent throughout that entire process, absolutely loved our care providers, and I was doing a lot of things to prepare for that home birth, such as chiropractic care and drinking all of the red raspberry leaf teas like the Nora tea, gentle birth tincture to help train and tone my uterus in preparation for the big day. So the stipulation with home birth in my state is that you have to at least get to the 36-week mark in order to be eligible and not have any high-risk complications that would otherwise risk us out of midwifery care and result in us going to the hospital. So my husband and I, as we were inching closer and closer to that 36-week mark, we were like, we just need to get there in order to be eligible for this home birth. So flash forward, 36 weeks arrives, and we're like, oh, thank goodness, we are in now the grace window. And I was still feeling great, had no signs of labor, so we had assumed that I was going to go the full 40 weeks, maybe a little over. Now, our midwife did give us the heads up that in order to be eligible for the home birth, not only do you have to make it to the 36-week mark without any complications, but you cannot exceed 42 weeks. So you have a sizable window in order to have baby between 36 weeks and 42 weeks. So we were like, okay, that's fine. Well, 40 weeks arrives. I'm working, still active, feeling a bit uncomfortable, but otherwise still very much enjoying my pregnancy. And then 41 weeks arrive, and at this point my husband and I are kind of freaking out, like, oh my gosh, we want to let nature take care of our pregnancy, and we don't want to have any type of intervention to try and encourage baby any sooner than they want to arrive. And we were getting really nervous. So at 41 weeks and 3 days, I agreed to a membrane sweep. So my midwife checked me, and I think I was 2 centimeters. She did a membrane sweep, and I was very emotional during that midwife appointment because I really didn't want any interventions, but at this time we were feeling like we were up against the clock. And I say that because if we didn't give birth by 42 weeks, then we would have to transfer to a hospital, and I just my husband and I over the years have really cultivated such a great home and partnership that was like our best place, and I wanted to give birth in our home. So I agreed to the membrane sweep. We decided to do that at 41 weeks and 3 days, and I had an acupuncture appointment, which prior to that I had not had an acupuncture appointment before, and that was lovely. Truly recommend that. It was just such a nice way to really center myself and connect with baby. And during that first appointment, I started thinking of like a birth mantra that just came to me, which I will share at the bottom of this video for anyone interested. So the first part of that mantra came to me, and it was all about like release and trusting baby, trusting body, trusting whatever this process was going to, however it was going to unfold, was going to be what was meant to be. So my midwife and us agreed that after the sweep acupuncture appointment, let's come back the next day if things haven't started. So after that acupuncture appointment, I think that was around like 7 p.m. in the evening, I went to bed fully expecting to go into labor, but woke up in the morning and I'm like, oh, everything's just fine. No signs of labor whatsoever. So I think a day went by. So at that point I was 41 and 4 days, and then I had another acupuncture appointment to try and get things started. I may have even had another I think I had a chiropractic appointment as well. Went to bed that night hoping that I would wake up in the middle of the night with contractions. Nothing whatsoever happened. And then at 41 weeks and 5 days, we had an early morning appointment with our midwife. We had another sweep, and we inserted the Foley balloon. At this point, we were like, let's try to have a natural intervention if possible to try and kickstart labor, because my midwife did clarify that if I were to have labored, be in the middle of labor at 41 weeks and 6 days, and it was midnight going into the 42-week mark, that I would have to transfer to the hospital, and we did not want that. Okay, so at 41 weeks and 5 days, we had an early morning midwife appointment and agreed to another membrane sweep and a Foley bulb, which was a saline-filled balloon, I believe, that is inserted in your uterus. And the hope is that it will help the uterus stretch a bit and dilate. And then from that point, my body would hopefully start labor and starts to dilate from there. So at my appointment, I had transitioned from 2 centimeters to 3 centimeters when the Foley bulb was placed, and that was excruciating. But I understood it was pain that was hopefully for the greater good. So I just remember after that appointment, I was so uncomfortable on the way home. I could barely sit in the passenger seat of the car. I was just super crampy, and I told my husband, I said, oh my gosh, I just need to use the bathroom and pee so bad. So we rushed home. It was about a 20-minute drive, so not far at all. And this is very TMI, but you know, it's a birth story, so that's how it goes. So I remember us pulling into the driveway, and immediately I unbuckled my seatbelt, ran inside, sat down on the toilet, and immediately felt like this chute of water, and I thought the balloon had busted inside of me. But I looked down and I could see the balloon in the toilet, and it was super bloody, and I'm like, oh my gosh, did my water break, or was that pee? And so immediately I called my midwife while I was still sitting on the toilet, and I said, I don't know if the balloon exploded out of me or my water broke. And she had asked, you know, well, are you still gushing water or leaking water? And I said, no. Is the balloon fully intact? Yes. So it was actually just urine. I just peed, and I guess it was like the pressure or something, but it ended up releasing the Foley bulb or Foley balloon, which meant I was dilating. So that was really exciting news. So she had said, you know, get something to eat, rest. The plan was for me to do the mile circuit through Spinning Babies, which I will link that somewhere on this video here and in the description below. But I had been doing the mile circuit, gosh, almost every single day for the past week and a half up until that point. So it's a series of 3 different workouts, 30-minute workouts. There's like a yoga pose, then a side lying position, which that's a great way to get a nap in when you're 40+ weeks pregnant, and then lunges or lunging up and down the steps, which I had been doing at 42 weeks, close to 42 weeks pregnant. It's a workout even if you're not pregnant. So my midwife said to follow with the plan that we had outlined that morning, and to do the mile circuit, and then get something to eat, rest, and you know, just kind of let labor, if it does start, let it just run its course, but make sure I'm getting the energy, food, hydration, and rest during the early labor period. So we started the mile circuit. So I did the yoga pose, which is kind of like a downward dog pose, for 30 minutes. And then I did the side lying position for 30 minutes. And then instead of lunging the steps, my husband and I decided to take a long walk around the neighborhood. So that was around 1 o'clock. Well, we hadn't even made it down my street when I started to feel my first contraction. So during this point, definitely in the 3rd trimester, I had what is referred to as lightning crotch, which is like this shooting jolt of pain that like happens in an instant, but it's exactly what it sounds like. And I remember feeling the tightening in my belly, and I told my husband, I was like, I think this is a contraction. And it was like ever so subtle, like it just was like a light wave that I could feel things tense and then release. Not at all as bad as the lightning crotch that I had experienced, at least up until that point. So immediately I'm getting all giddy, like, oh my gosh, I think labor's starting for us. We might actually have this home birth. So we were super excited. My husband and I continued our walk. We ended up walking almost 3 miles, and we started timing contraction. I think they were anywhere between 5 and 7 minutes, 14 minutes or something. They were very irregular at that time and very manageable. Like, it was super easy but noticeable. But it was very exciting. So of course we're all energized and excitedly texting our midwife and doula and letting them know, and they said all the same thing, you know, make sure you eat, drink, try to rest. So the instruction to rest was very important, because if I tried to lay down and the contraction stopped, then that just shows that you're really not in labor yet. But if they continued while I was resting, then that's kind of the trajectory of your labor. So we tried to take a nap, but contractions continued and still manageable at that point. I think we may have rested for about an hour or 2. I did get a little bit of sleep. So all of this was Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. So we woke up from our late evening nap. I think I tried to eat something, but I just did not have an appetite at that point. I don't know if it was nerves, but I definitely remember the contractions were starting to be noticeably uncomfortable, but nothing that I couldn't handle. I will pause here to say I was so looking forward to just feeling labor, feeling the intensity. I was viewing this as like the greatest marathon that I would ever run, even though I've never ran a marathon, but the biggest physical challenge. And I was really looking forward to just like going inward and riding that challenge for whatever it was going to be. So all of this to say, I truly feel like I remained in positive spirits through all of this. So contractions were starting to definitely intensify. I remember my husband was juicing oranges in our kitchen, and I was sitting on a yoga ball, picking out dead leaves from a house plant that I had, and as a way to kind of cope and distract myself through the contractions. But after a while, I couldn't even distract myself that way. I had to like really focus. So I then transitioned to our living room, and I quickly realized I could not sit down at all on my butt. Like, I was having a lot of back labor, and it was really hard. And anytime a contraction would hit, I would immediately have to go on my hands and knees or rest with my upper body on the seat of our couch with my knees on the floor and just kind of ride the wave of a contraction. And that went on from all night, so 8 p.m. all night. At one point we did text our doula to ask if we should transition to our bathtub just so that I could get some rest and maybe just soak. At this point we had a birth tub, but we had not set that up yet, and we were made aware, you know, that could slow down labor, but at that point I was really just looking forward to some rest. So we went upstairs to soak in my tub, and I just remember falling asleep during contractions, and my poor husband was trying to nap in the bathroom with me, but the contractions were still very intense. So then we got out of the tub, went back downstairs in the living room, and at this point I had a labor playlist that I had curated, and that thing repeated so many times. And this was a playlist that was probably 4 hours, 5 hours long, and it just kept repeating, and I ended up building like a very strong aversion where I could not listen to any songs from this playlist for a very long time because it was just so traumatic. But we went back downstairs into the living room, again, used the yoga ball, tried to rock and sway and rest in between contractions. And then we called or texted our doula. Our doula arrived around 4 a.m., 5 a.m. So at this point I was 41 and 6 days. So it was the Thursday. And she arrived and we were still laboring together. I believe we lunged the steps, tried to remain active, and then I was really looking for some relief again, so we went into the birth pool, which again we were warned that may slow things down. At that point I was like not even worried about slowing labor down, just looking to try and cope, really. And I really enjoyed the birth pool. I did find that it was hard for me to find my balance. So what we ended up doing is we used a lot of bath towels, which I had a really dear friend of me who donated some extra towels for me. And at first we were looking at this pile of towels from her and our own collection. Like, there's no way we're gonna use all these, but we used them all. I ended up folding up a bunch of towels and used that to like sit on and prop myself and kind of like form a cocoon. And that really helped. Yeah, the contractions just continued. My midwife eventually arrived at 9 a.m.-ish. That day she checked me, and I think I was 5 centimeters dilated by that point. And then we were faced with another decision because we're at 41 weeks and 6 days, right? So we're up against this clock where I have to deliver by 42 weeks if I want to have this home birth, which we wanted to do it all. So we agreed to have my water broken. I was warned that once it's broken, it may really intensify the contractions that much more, which I was prepared for, again, for the greater good, and that's exactly what happened. So contractions really intensified. I had continuous monitoring for myself and baby. I was still feeling movement. Everything was fine. No temperature or anything at that point. Labor was just really, really hard. And I was doing all the things, laboring in our living room, lunging the steps. I was using the breast pump to try to encourage labor. And things just weren't working. I remember laying on the bed, and that was the most painful thing ever, laying on my bed with the peanut ball between my legs in a side-lying position. And I can just remember feeling the contractions hit at me, almost trying to crawl and race out of my skin upward towards the headboard. Like, that's how strong the contractions were feeling. And I remember my midwife was so kind. She said, Lydia, you can't run away from these contractions. You have to embrace them. If you fight them, they're not doing what they need to do. So then I remember we had purchased the audiobook of the childbirth the Bradley way. I'll link the title of the book here. But it was, I remember one of the analogies that were mentioned during that book was to pretend that there's a wave and you're kind of like bobbing in the ocean, and when a wave comes, you kind of jump up and you feel it kind of carry you weightless, and then you eventually are settled back down, and then you wait for the next wave. So, or just float on top of it. And that's what I started to visualize in the sideline position, and that certainly helped. It didn't take away the intensity of the contractions, but just having that strong visual really did help me. My doula had a TENS machine, which I definitely remember her saying, do you want 2 little things or do you want 5 things? And it's a TENS machine is like electrodes or something that there's little sticky pads that you can put on your back to help distract the pain from the contractions and focus on a different sensation. It's not painful. And I'm thinking, oh, put them all on my back. I don't want to settle with just 2, like slap them all on there. And so she did. So that definitely helped too. So all of that to say, that was pretty much just what we were doing. We were trying to remain active, alternating between laboring on the toilet, steps, bed. It was recommended that I go out for a walk, and I could not even fathom going for a walk, so I declined that, although I am curious, had I gone for a walk, if that would have progressed labor even more. But so I eventually got into the birth pool again, I think around 9 p.m. at that 41 week and 6 day mark, and I was laboring. I remember watching my husband start to nod off, and I kindly asked him, I said, do you have an energy drink in the garage? And he said, yeah. I said, go get it, because I was so annoyed that he was falling asleep and I was still like trying to deliver our baby or labor for our baby. So we eventually got out of the birth pool and had one more check. And at this point, I think it was like 11:50 at the 41 week and 6 day mark, and I was only 5 centimeters dilated. And I think I was at station -2, 90% of face, so the baby was still very high, but my dilation wasn't there. So at that point, we transferred to a hospital. So after laboring I think it was 33 hours at home, we commuted 30 minutes to the hospital that we had chose, because we had learned that this particular hospital had a relationship with our midwife and that they are more open to home birth transfers and natural unmedicated births compared to other hospitals. And again, our whole mindset was really to just approach our pregnancy and birth in a natural, hands-off, intervention-free process for us. So we transferred. I immediately asked for the epidural, just because I wanted to get some rest and kind of gain some energy, and then hopefully resume an unmedicated birth the following day. So we ended up getting to the hospital, I think around 1 a.m. At the 42 week mark, I kindly declined a cervical check, which they were insistent that I do, but I told them I had just been checked 30 minutes prior. I'm feeling no difference. I'm not feeling the pressure of a baby or anything, and that I was still trusting my body at that point. So we did have to push back a few times, and I truly advocate for any patient, to learn your voice and to just be prepared for these types of questions. If you do choose to birth in the hospital, or even if you're birthing with a midwife, any provider, just know where you stand on certain requests and anticipate those requests and how you would answer them. So I declined a cervical check. I did receive the epidural, I think around 3 a.m. It was great. I could still kind of feel my legs and like move them. They were very heavy, but the pain went away. I didn't feel a single contraction from that point forward. So thankfully my husband and I were able to rest. I think we went to bed around 4 a.m. at that 42-week mark, and then woke up around 7 a.m. and I was flipping positions. I was sleeping with a peanut ball, and periodically the nurses would come in to have me change positions, I think just to help baby descend further into the birth canal. So then we woke up around 7, and then that's when things really picked up. Our nurse had told us that the baby's heart rate started to decel, which at that point I was wearing a monitor on my belly, and I thought I just bumped it, so I didn't think anything of it. I just thought we lost the heartbeat briefly because of that, but she repositioned that on me, and then warned us that, you know, if we start to notice heart decels, that will be an emergent situation and results in a C-section. So it was then recommended that I go on Pitocin to try to restart labor because my contractions had slowed down, which I kindly declined that. Instead, I asked for a breast pump because I wanted to encourage natural endorphins versus fake endorphins. That Pitocin is a synthetic version of what your body will automatically create. So they were getting the breast pump, and then at that point the baby had another heart decel. And then they recommended that they place a monitor on the baby's skull, which I'm forgetting the name of that. But we consulted with our midwife to ask what her thoughts were, and ultimately decided we agreed to that monitor. It's like a little copper screw that they put on the baby. So they inserted that. At this point I was still only 5 centimeters dilated to my knowledge. Then after inserting that, then the baby's heart rate decel'd again, and that was when the team came in and said, you know, the baby's heart rate has decel'd several times already. At this point we are recommending a C-section before it becomes an emergent situation. So my husband and I consulted with their midwife again, you know, reviewed and said, you know, we're seeing the writing on the wall, a C-section is imminent, so let's see if we can just give them our list of requests for how we would want a C-section to look like for us. And I will also say that I'm so thankful that my husband and I agreed to, or declined the Pitocin, because they did say that the baby, with the baby's heart rate decelerating, they wouldn't tolerate Pitocin anyway. So I'm glad that we declined that. So our requests for a C-section were that I didn't want my arms to be strapped down. I wanted my husband to be able to announce the sex of the baby. We chose not to find out. I wanted to save my placenta so I could have it encapsulated, and to have delayed cord clamping, which they said that they don't do delayed cord clamping. So anyway, I get prepped in the OR, and I remember I was in great spirits. I was talking to the anesthesiologist and the provider staff. We were talking about a Woodstock documentary that my husband and I had just watched and everything, and it was very, like, it was a great experience that I had. I was very thankful that it was not an emergent situation. I remember a nurse had asked if I wanted to listen to any kind of music as we delivered baby, to which I gave her the name of my favorite band. And so they administered the medication, and I remember like feeling the tugging but no pain or anything. And then I remember them saying that they were about to birth the baby, and I could hear them screaming. It felt like they were screaming like before they even were removed from my body. So they birthed my baby, and asked my husband to announce the sex of the baby, to which he said it's a boy. And then the doctor asked him to say it again. She was very messy, so she had pooped all over the place. which I think may have been another reason why her heart rate decelled. I don't know, this is just my guess, is that she was under some stress for being in labor for so long. But we ended up having a baby girl, and she was crying, healthy, everything was so wonderful with her. And then for me, that's when things really turned into a traumatic situation. I remember shaking and just being almost like I wasn't even like a person in the room anymore. I thought I was gonna die. I think I was so sensitive to the medication. I was so loopy. I remember I could barely keep my eyes open. And it was such a hard situation because during my entire pregnancy, I was so present and connected to my baby. And I felt like the moment that I had really looked forward to, I was not at all in that headspace to really comprehend much. So I just remember them passing the baby, getting her cleaned up, and they brought her over to me for me to hold, and I was in no state to try and hold her. I had to ask my husband to take her away because I was afraid that I was going to drop her. I was shaking uncontrollably, so I was asking my husband to actually like physically keep my arms down. And I was so sleepy, I just wanted to close my eyes, but I thought that if I closed my eyes, I would die. So I remember asking the anesthesiologist that, like, can I take a nap? And then I was getting hot and nauseous. It was like all of these things like really hit me. And I just remembered laying on the operating table, like counting down the seconds, like, I just want this to be over, I just want this to be over. And all I could do was just lay there and wait. So, but eventually it ended, and I was wheeled into the postpartum or post-op. I don't even know the name of the rooms, but I was able to actually meet my daughter, and she was able to nurse right away, and our midwife was there. At that point, she was acting as our doula. We couldn't have our entire birth team with us, but we were just on cloud nine. I was definitely still out of it, trying to process all of these medications. I think everything really just shocked my system. So I definitely had a hard time postpartum, like immediate, like hours into postpartum recovery. I remember looking over at my husband, who's like in complete bliss, and like I automatically became like the second woman in his life. Like my daughter easily surpassed me, and she was just like his entire world, and which as a mother and wife, it's just a beautiful thing to see. But I remember in that moment, like, gosh, I wish I was feeling what you're feeling right now, and all I was feeling is just trauma, I guess. So in a way, I think that's why it's taken so long for me to post this video or make this video, because I've spent a lot of time trying to process all of this, which I've come to terms with my birth story and experience. In a lot of ways, I feel like there's a reason why I went through all of this. I still had a phenomenal pregnancy. My favorite part of labor were the 33 hours unmedicated at home that were hard, but they were beautiful. So happy to report we're over a year later. My daughter is just like the best thing in our entire world. Our entire world is focused on her, focused on the three of us. So we're just being really present with each other, and it's simply the best. So okay, so it is now the next morning, and my GoPro died yesterday at the very tail end of my video, so I want to officially sign off. Thank you so much for watching this, if you did watch this. If not, I am very thankful that I was able to carve out time to make this video really for myself as a way to process. At the end of the day, we are happy that we had a successful birth. It did not go the way we had originally envisioned, but I am thankful that I was able to journal immediately postpartum, like what I went through, because I feel like that's really helped me see that I was very strong through this process. And at the end of the day, I did get what I wanted. I wanted to go through something that would really test me and have me go and really like work internally and see what my body could do. I am very much looking forward to the opportunity to attempt another home birth. I hope that I'm blessed to do so. But for now, that is my birth story. So if you want to connect with me, I have my email and Instagram linked below. Feel free to reach out. I hope this helps anyone if you are either on your journey to motherhood or are processing your own birth story. I'd love to hear it. So, all right, take care. Bye-bye.